photographer, trendsetter, book editor, and First Lady are some of the many roles I've taken on throughout my life. Hi, I'm Jacqueline Kennedy ONASSIS, and I'm proud to be nominated into this year's Hall of Fame. One of the jobs I had was a photographer for the Washington Times-Herald. I was a camera girl for the Washington Times-Herald and interviewed Washington, D.C. residents. I photographed many people during this time, including my soon-to-be husband, John F. Kennedy. In my lifetime, I've set quite a few fashion trends, and one of my most famous trends was the pillbox hat. When my husband was assassinated, I happened to be wearing this hat and made it famous. Also, people would follow these looks, and they were called the Jackie look. These trends were hairstyles, dress lengths, and even hats. My husband, John F. Kennedy, became president in 1961, and as a result, I became the First Lady. My first task as a First Lady was to remodel and decorate the White House. My goal was to turn it into an American history museum. So we started by using artifacts belonging to people that are important to our country. While I was finishing up the project, I gave a televised tour of the new and improved White House. After the remodel, the White House looked very patriotic. As you can see, I have set quite a few fashion trends and improved the White House a lot. Another thing that made me famous was my elegance and kindness. Thank you for nominating me into this year's Hall of Fame. I, Jacqueline Kennedy ONASSIS, am a woman above everything else.
What would you do if people called you greedy just because you were poor when you were young, and now you're making a difference in the world by being at the top? What I did was keep working. I'm Ava PERÓN. I'm nominated to this year's Hall of Fame because I help the poor, I work very hard to get where I am, and because I am a determined woman. First off, I help the poor a lot. In July 1948, I opened the Ava PERÓN Foundation. This foundation was established to help the poor. I worked very hard and never missed a day at work, even though I had a medical condition I didn't know about. I helped the poor by giving them money based on what they needed. I took care of the poor more than I took care of myself. Also, I worked very hard to get where I am. I had a very bad acting career when I was 15, but without that I wouldn't be where I was today. On January 15, 1944, I met my husband, JOAN PERÓN, thanks to an earthquake. On June 4th, 1946, my husband, JOAN PERÓN, got elected president of Argentina. That is when I started to make a difference. Lastly, I should be nominated to the Hall of Fame because I was a determined woman. Even though people called me greedy, I kept working. I was determined to help as many people as I could. Lastly, I was determined to help women's rights, and I did, by traveling to many countries to raise awareness. From the moment I was born, I never gave up on my goals, to rise from the bottom to the top and to help the poor. I was determined and hardworking. Thanks to my effort, many people have better lives. I thank you for nominating me into this year's Hall of Fame.
Have you ever been a pilot, nurse, and an English teacher? Yeah. I believe you can do anything you decide to. Hello, I'm Amelia EARHART. Thank you for nominating me into the Hall of Fame. On Christmas Day in 1920, my life changed. My father and I went to an air show at Long Beach, California. The pilots were racing and standing on the wings. Man, people were allowed to do anything back then. When I went to that air show, I knew I had to become a pilot. 3 days later, my father and I went to Rogers Field where I had my first plane ride. At nearby Kenner Airfield, a woman pilot, Nita Schnook, agreed to teach me lessons. More and more lessons, more and more flights I flew. A little while later, I wanted to fly all around the world. I got a special plane called the Electra. I hired 2 navigators to help me. We flew from California and stopped at Miami and continued flying east around the world. Unfortunately, we ran out of gas near Howland Island. A Coast Guard ship was sent to help. I sent a message saying, "We must be on you, but we cannot see you. Gas is running low. We've been unable to reach you by radio." The radio man tried to send me a message where we could not hear. Though I did not fly all around the world, I still proved that all pilots did not have to be male. Hello, I'm Amelia EARHART. Thank you for nominating me into the Hall of Fame.
Can you imagine becoming royalty? What about marrying a prince? Well, that happened to me. Diana Frances Spencer. Thank you for nominating me to the 2019 History Hall of Fame. I was born July 1st, 1961. When I was young, my father told me to treat everyone as an individual and never throw your weight around. Ever since I was little, I always followed this saying and was always kind to everyone and everywhere and anything. When I attended West Health Private School, that's where all my charity work began. Later, I became a kindergarten assistant teacher and a part-time nanny. When I was 19, me and Prince Charles fell in love. While I was dating him, I would be invited to the royal castle a lot. My family was already very close to the royal family or the crown. I never actually thought I would be part of it. That all changed when Prince Charles proposed to me. We got married later that year and had 2 beautiful boys. From that day on, after we got married, I was known as Princess Diana, and I'm still known as that till this day. When I became a mother, I wanted to set a good example for my boys. I did that by increasing my amount of charity work. I became involved in helping people who had a disease called AIDS. I believe that even if you had a disease, you should be treated like everyone else. Imagine if I had a disease and you didn't, you wouldn't treat me differently. Well, some people thought that just because I had a disease, I was very different. They wouldn't even come near me. But I believed that that was wrong, so I wasn't afraid to go near them, go near people who had this disease and comfort them. I also tried to discourage the use of landmines or underground bombs. These were very common in Africa, but I knew they hurt too many innocent people. Imagine walking home from a special event or even from school, and then a mile off, or maybe even 2 feet off, you hear an explosion. That was what was happening in Africa, and I knew that they hurt too many innocent people. Even when the war was ended between countries, the bombs were still implanted in the ground, and you have no idea when they would explode because they were still activated. Before I go, I would like to say thank you once again for recognizing me for my charity work and my efforts to make the world a better place. Don't forget that you can help people in your community as well. Thank you for your time.
Can you imagine a world without basketball? That's the world people lived in before I invented it. I also invented the football helmet, became a doctor in World War I, and became a minister. Hi, my name is James A. Naismith, and I should be nominated into the 2019 Hall of Fame. As a child, I enjoyed playing a game called Duck on a Rock, which would later lead to me creating basketball on December 21st, 1891. Then I went to college to study ministry, and after I graduated, I became a minister. Then I became a student teacher at a YMCA, and my boss made me create a game for the winter because the kids had nothing to do. I struggled with this challenge for 12 days. When on the 13th day, I thought back to the game I played as a child, Duck on a Rock, and thought of the perfect game later called basketball. Some of the original 13 rules of my game are the ball can be batted with the hands, not the fist, get 3 fouls, and the other team gets a goal, and when the ball goes out of bounds, the first person to touch it or the umpire will throw it back in bounds. At first, I wanted to become a doctor because I wanted to help hurt basketball players, but after I graduated from Gross Medical College in Denver, Colorado, the YMCA sent me around the world to help American soldiers during World War I. Also during the war, I became a chaplain or a minister during the 1st Kansas Infantry. As you can see, I contributed to the world in many ways, and even today, many kids and adults still play the sport of basketball. It is one of the most popular sports around the world, and it all started on December 21st, 1891. Thank you.
Our hearts are aching, our prayers are praying, our flag is waving, never forget. Those are the famous words I said after making the first American flag. I was very honored that General George Washington asked me to make the American flag. My name is Betsy Ross, and I feel very proud to be nominated to the Hall of Fame. I was born in 1752, and as a child, I had a very good education, which many girls do not have. The reason I had education was because I was a Quaker. When I was a little girl, my mother and Great Aunt Sarah taught me how to sew. With my tiny hands, I was very good at it. My father wanted me to know a trade, so I became a seamstress. Later, me and my husband started an upholstery shop. We wanted to support the people fighting for freedom. Even though I owned the shop, no one could afford new furniture. I needed more money to support myself. So I sold children's clothes to make more money. Then one night, I got a knock at the door. It was General George Washington with 3 other men. He asked me to make the American flag. I agreed. I was very proud to help support my country in time of war, and it made my money to help support my growing family. We finally won the war, and my flag is put everywhere. The flag is a symbol of freedom to all Americans. It will always be there in a time of war and peace. It makes me feel proud to be an American. I am Betsy Ross, and I feel very privileged to be nominated to the Hall of Fame.
One day I was in a classroom teaching kids about sea stars, sea sponges, squids, and crabs. I never knew this would one day help me create one of the biggest TV shows in history. Hi, I'm Stephen Hillenberg, and in addition to creating the hit TV show SpongeBob SquarePants, I've gone to one of the biggest art schools in the USA, and as a teacher, taught kids about marine biology. This is why I should be nominated into the Hall of Fame. I was born in 1961, far away from the ocean. My grandmother was a talented painter and artist, a trait that I would pick up. I liked watching shows by French oceanographer Jacques Cousteau. He inspired me and was one of the reasons I like marine biology so much. The key to my success was probably my large sense of humor and my love for marine biology. It wouldn't be the same if SpongeBob lived on land. An important thing I had to do in making SpongeBob was make people laugh and put joy in their day. All my friends say I'm down to earth and shy. I would also add that I like having a laugh and spending time with my family. People will remember me as the creator of one of the biggest TV shows in history. I would be honored to be in the Hall of Fame.
Can you imagine stepping off a boat to see soldiers laying on the ground, wounded and ill, covered in blood with no one to care for them? Well, that's exactly what I saw when my nurses and I arrived in Scutari, a village in Turkey. It was 1854 and the Crimean War had just begun. It was going to be tough, but we had to nurse them back to full health. Hi, I'm Florence Nightingale, and I have earned my nomination to the Hall of Fame.
I was born to a very fancy and wealthy family, however, I was very different from everyone else. I enjoyed reading and learning. Occasionally, my mother Fanny would take my sister Parth and I to visit the poor people in our village. All I could think about was the horrible conditions the people were living in, the nasty clothes they had to wear, and their hopeless faces. When I was 16, I believed God had finally chosen his purpose for me. I needed to do good in the world. I needed to be a nurse. I later took a trip to Kaiserswerth, which is a hospital in Prussia, to be trained as a nurse. Not long after returning from Kaiserswerth, the Crimean War had begun and soldiers were in need of medical help. My friend, Sir Sidney Herbert, asked me if I would help take charge of one of the hospitals, and of course I said yes. When my nurses and I arrived, we learned the Army doctors didn't approve of women helping out. They believed the nurses would treat the soldiers like babies and wouldn't let us help until battles between Balaclava and Inkerman sent many wounded soldiers into the hospitals. 2 years later, the war came to an end and I was able to go home. I ended up publishing a book called Notes on Nursing, What It Is and What It Is Not, to teach people about the basics of nursing. I also got invited to visit Queen Victoria, where I told her about the things I had seen and ways to improve nursing. I believe that my determination helped me get through all the tough challenges I faced, helped me save lives, and helped me earn my nomination to the Hall of Fame.
People know me as a Maid of Orleans. I was nicknamed this because I led the French army to victory in a very important battle in the 100 Years' War. At the age of 13, God began guiding me to help the people of France. I had beautiful visions and spoke to saints and angels. Hi, my name is Joan of Arc, the patron saint of France. In 1429, I was considered a heroine for helping the French army drive the English out of France. It's an honor to be nominated to the Hall of Fame. I was born in France in the year 1412 during the 100 Years' War, a long battle between England and France. I began hearing voices from God telling me that I should help the people of France in their war effort, even though it was unusual for women to be at war. I was hesitant to leave my parents and home, but I knew I had to save my country. I led King Charles' army into battle, and among those soldiers were my 3 brothers. During war, I was very brave. Once while I was climbing a ladder, I was shot with an arrow in between my shoulder and neck. After I pulled the arrow out, I rested, and days later, I continued fighting. The soldiers were inspired by my courage. It would take many weeks to drive the English out of France, but we eventually won. I was able to organize the troops as the angels had asked me to do, but I still needed to lead Charles to Reims to make sure he could be crowned as king. Once we had completed that, my job was done. I had led France to freedom and made sure Charles was crowned as king. My work was very important for the world's history. People may know me for being the first woman soldier, but I'm also a very famous saint. Thank you for nominating me to the Hall of Fame.
What else can TV do? That is the question I kept asking myself. That's when I came up with the idea. If people can watch shows on TV, why can't they play games? This led me to invent the first home video games ever to be played on a TV. Hi, I'm Ralph Baer, and I have earned nomination to the Hall of Fame. The beginning of my life was hard. I was Jewish and I lived in Germany during the Holocaust. When I was 16, my family moved to America. When we got to America, my family changed my name from Rudolph to Ralph because my full name was Rudolph Heinrich Baer. I went to work in a factory and I learned to fix radios. My life was still hard there because I was in the Great Depression. When I was older, I went to a college in Chicago and graduated from the American Television Institute of Technology. Then, I built the Brown Box, the first video game console. I also went to the White House to receive the Medal of Technology. Then somebody named Magnavox licensed the Brown Box, paving the way for future video games. About a year later, I was having surgery. When I was waiting for the nurses, they came in with a check of $100,000. It was because Magnavox sold 250,000 Brown Boxes. My invention was a success. My curiosity and creativity has led me to an amazing invention. And although not a lot of people know my name, millions of people enjoy playing video games today because of my invention. And I have definitely earned nomination to the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Good day to you, sir. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Washington. George Washington, that is. You may know me better as the father of our country, for at the age of 57, I became your very first president of the United States. I would like to tell you how that came to be. I was born on February 22nd, 1732. I was homeschooled and was a very strong math student and horseman. I moved to Mount Vernon with my brother, where I became a lance surveyor. After he died, I took his place as an officer in the militia. I was 20 at the time. The Journal of Major George Washington made me famous. I was considered to be smart, fair, and loyal. I led the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War, defeated the British in 1783, and won our independence. After that, I was asked to become president. I served 2 terms as your president. Honesty is very important to me, and I cannot tell a lie. So I will say before I end that I did not chop down that cherry tree. That was a story made up by an author named Mason Locke who wanted to make me sound more interesting. I do like cherry pie, though, which I can eat since I have my good teeth, which are made of ivory, not wood. Thank you for nominating me into this year's Hall of Fame. I bid you good night.
Have you ever taken care of a baby at just age 7? Saved hundreds of lives? Been a spy in a war? I didn't think so. Hello, my name is Harriet Tubman, and I'm very grateful to be nominated into this year's History Hall of Fame. To begin with, when I was just 7 years old, I was sent off to a temporary owner named Miss Susan. Miss Susan had a baby. At night, I had to gently rock the baby so that it didn't cry. If the baby cried, or I was tired, I would be whipped. In my late 20s, I escaped from slavery on the Underground Railroad and later became a conductor on the Underground Railroad. I made long, hard, risky trips from slave plantations in the South to safe states in the North. I saved over 100 slaves. When the Civil War started, I became a nurse, cook, and a spy. I was an especially good spy. I used the forced navigation skills my father taught me when I was very young and my experience on the Underground Railroad to track down and attack Confederate troops. On the whole, my life was very successful. From the day I was born till the day I will die, I have never given up on my dreams. I saved hundreds of lives and I helped stop slavery, and for that reason I am famous. I'm Harriet Tubman, and thank you for nominating me into this year's History Hall of Fame.
Can you imagine waking up, thinking it was a normal day, and then finding out your father was leaving you, your mother, and your sister to fend for yourselves? No? Well then, you wouldn't last a day in my shoes. I'm PERÓN, or maybe you know me as Evita, and this is the story of my life. I didn't start school until I was 8 years old, and my father left before I was 7 years old. I grew up in poverty, but throughout my life I rose to power and was later known as one of the most powerful women in Argentina. Before I was the first lady, I worked as a radio actress, starring in soap operas, sometimes with partners. I'm famous for work in activism such as women's rights. I also help support the working poor. I was determined to keep working even with the hatred and doubt given by others. I know how hard it is to be poor, and just because I'm nominated now doesn't mean I should forget my past when I have the chance to share others' futures. As you can see, I'm a very important part of our world's history. Thank you for nominating me into this year's History Hall of Fame.
I was just a little girl in New York City until I met John F. Kennedy, who would later become my husband, who knew it to becoming First Lady. I am Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, and I should be nominated to this year's Hall of Fame. I became the First Lady in January 1960. When we arrived to the house, I knew there needed to be major changes, so I was the first one to renovate the house. I also put in a school for my kids John, Jr., and Caroline. I also hosted many dinner parties, making sure guests always felt welcome. I went on many trips to JFK, such as France, Vienna, Australia, Europe, and London. One of the trips I went on was Europe. I made this trip because JFK and I had to meet the Soviet Union of Australia. I was also very caring. I made a goodwill trip to India. Being the brave, kind, intelligent person I am, thank you for nominating me to this year's Hall of Fame. Can you imagine being forced out of your home and stuffed into a small apartment with total strangers? That's what Jewish people had to do. I'm Irena SENDLER, and I should be nominated into the Hall of Fame because I worked hard to stop the Nazis' evil. In my life, I watched my friends being taken away, had near-death experience, and bravely saved 2,500 children from the horrors of the Warsaw Ghetto. When I was young, my father was the only doctor who would help poor Jewish patients. Eventually, he got typhus and died, but his consideration to others left me scarred. I first decided to help Jewish people from the Nazis when all my friends were forced in the ghettos. Then I joined a resistance group called Zagoda and started working on mainly taking children out of the Warsaw Ghetto. Sadly, after about 2 years working for Zagoda, I was betrayed and sent to prison, but I refused to tell the Nazis anything about Zagoda, and I denied that it existed, so I was sent to a torture camp. The Nazis wanted the information out of me so they would not kill me. After about a month, both my arms and legs were broken, but I still would not spell, so the Nazis decided to put me up for execution. Luckily, one of my friends paid a bail to the Nazis so they let me go. They also put my name on the executed list, so people were not hunting for me anymore, but I had to go into hiding. When the war ended, we dug up the list of children's real identities I'd kept throughout the years and found that over 2,500 children had lived thanks to Zagoda. Being the considerate, courageous, determined person I was, I fought my whole life for people's rights. Thank you for nominating me into the Hall of Fame.
Imagine a world with violence and pain, not knowing what to do in life. Luckily, we don't. I know what I did made a difference in the world. Because of me, we don't have to imagine a world without my inventions. I'm the one and only, the one who made bulletproof clothing, Stephanie KWOLEK. In my life, I lost my dad at 10 years old. He died from a bullet, but he made me fall in love with what I did. He was my inspiration. All my life, I wanted to do something that would help. I wanted to invent something, but I was too young at 10 years old. Me and my country, America, were going through hard times, but I was always strong. We were going through the Depression at the time. At the time, I loved working in the lab, which was something my dad loved but did not know about. I did not know that this was what was going to take me far. I then started a job called Deeport for 40 years running thousands of experiments. Although none of the experiments produced anything as strong as steel, I never gave up. I then told a reporter that I made another batch and it was not strong enough. They did not check it and were going to throw it away. I checked it under a microscope and saw it was strong enough. This gave the material for bulletproof clothing. Being the brave, hardworking, determined woman I was, I fought endlessly for peace, and I made the world a better place. Thank you for nominating me into the History of the Hall of Fame.
Imagine if one person saved hundreds of people all by themselves. Well, that's what I, Oskar Schindler, did. I saved 1,200 Jews from one of the most threatening periods of history, the Holocaust. This is when around 6 million Jews were killed. I was born on April 28, 1908 on a farm in Czechoslovakia. I started switching my jobs because no one would accept me, so I gave up and started my own enamel factory, which makes Fire Champagne. After that, I befriended a man named Zach Stern, who hinted to the Jews I was there to help. I also saved 1,200 Jews from the Holocaust, who went to jail 3 times and almost got shot too. But nothing stopped me. I kept on breaking the law, no matter what the causes were. That's why I was awarded Righteous Among the Nation Award, and my name is now in the Household World of Courage. I've done what no man has done, and I'm proud of myself. Thank you for nominating me in this year's Hall of Fame.
Have you ever wondered who wrote the most famous diary? Well, that was me, Anne Frank. I grew up during World War II, and I journal about my life during this time. Thank you. I hope you'll vote for me in the Hall of Fame. For my 13th birthday, I got a diary. I wrote my life story in it. The first thing I wrote was, I hope you will be a great support and comfort to me. After the Nazis started taking Jewish people to camps, me and my family packed our things. We snuck through town to a place called the Annex. The entrance to the Annex was located in my dad's work building behind the bookshelf. We hid there for 2 years till we were discovered and sent to concentration camps. After the war, my dad was the only survivor. He found my diary and published it so the world could learn of our experience in hiding. It was written in 50 different languages. It is such an honor to be selected into the Hall of Fame. I do hope that one day you will also do something that will change the world.
Who challenged right to the Constitution, helped end segregation, and started her own boycott? That was me, Rosa Parks. I'm determined and polite, and without my actions on the bus, life may be different today. Thank you for nominating me into the Hall of Fame. One day I was coming home from work like normal. I got on a bus and sat down. Soon the bus filled and one white man was left standing. The driver asked me to switch with him. I ignored him and didn't move the slightest bit. He asked many more times. Determined to stand my ground, I stayed because this is not fair treatment. He called the police soon after and I was arrested. I was up all night with my friends making a plan to be free. We were planning to challenge the Constitution's highest law that says everyone must be treated equally. Segregation law is not against this. I knew this wasn't fair, so I started my own boycott. I asked people not to ride the buses, but to take cabs, walk, or ride with others instead. This way the bus company will lose money and possibly change the ways on the buses. My boycott lasted 381 days. During this time, the Supreme Court agreed that the bus laws were unconstitutional. Thanks to help of me and also that of others have led to many positive changes in our government. When you think of America or the Constitution, think of me and all the others who have helped make a difference. Thank you so much for nominating me into this year's Hall of Fame.
Have you ever wondered how the universe started? Me too. I spent my life studying the universe and everything around us. Hello, I'm Stephen Hawking, a theoretical physicist. Thank you for nominating me to the Hall of Fame. During my younger years, I would often lay down on the grass and look up at the stars, wondering how they came to be. As a child, I would look at old clocks and radios and take them apart to see how all the pieces fit together. At age 21, I was ice skating with my family around Christmas time, when suddenly I fell and I couldn't get up. So my mother took me to the doctors, and the doctors discovered that I had a disease called ALS. This disease eventually shut down the nerves that control my muscles. But I didn't let that stop me from achieving my greatness. I met and married my wife Jane Wilde and had 2 kids, Lucy and Robert. They gave me something to live for. Thank you for nominating me to the Hall of Fame. I hope to be remembered as the greatest theoretical physicist ever.